in case you were wondering, yes, I was using a bicycle to do that. That's why you saw the handle. I know, fourth wall. While I've been waiting on a few extra pieces to show up for the sniper system, I've been busy making a mess here in the garage. First thing I do is I pulled out the old fuel system. You can see some of it's here. I pulled some of the fittings, some of it's still coming apart. There's the old carburetor, and the old Holley fuel pump. And I've started to incorporate the new bits in. So what I've got here is the pump that's included with the sniper system. I was curious about this pump. I wasn't sure when it showed up. It has a fitting on this end that is removable. It's a barb fitting now, but you could swap that out for something else. But the outlet side of the pump, where it heads up to the fuel injection system, that barb is non-removable. So they sent some adapters with the kit, and what I've got at the moment is how it's going to be in the car. This is going to be at the bottom, this is going to be at the top. So this is my pre-filter. It's 100 micron, it's 100 microns. There's going to be a line that goes from the fuel cell into here. It's going to come out, make a turn. This whole assembly is going to mount on the front side of the fuel cell, so towards the front of the car, where the old Holley pump mounted. It's going to come out of this pre-filter, go into the pump, come out to this post filter, which was a 40 micron when I had a carburetor. It's now swapped out for a 10. Then there's going to be a 90 that comes off of here. It's going to run down and all the way to the front of the car where the regulator is going to live. This bracket right here is what was holding the old fuel pump. You can see it's actually a combination. It holds the fuel cell in place as well as mounted the pump. So I'm going to reuse that, drill some holes in that, probably put some rubber bushings between to knock down some of the vibrations. Not that it matters. Dogs are barking. Are my parts here? I think my parts are here. Otto, do we have parts? Do we have parts? Are parts here? Let's look. It's alright, he farted real bad. We have farts. Do we have parts? Okay, those weren't our parts, but these might be our parts. It's Fat Axe. What do you think, bud? So Otto was right, parts are here. We'll check that out in just a bit. But as I was saying, we've got our pre-filter. Let's go into our pump. The pump uses the line that was included with the sniper kit to go to the post filter. That's going to take a 90. It's going to use some steel braided line. That's going to run up the front to the regulator. So the plan is to go ahead and finish up the fuel system, run all the lines from the fuel cell in the back all the way up to the regulator in the front. Then we'll wrap up the wiring and we should be in business. So the other thing that I've done while I was waiting on that stuff to show up is start to lay out the wiring. So you can see we've got a good bit of the harness in place. I've got the water temp sensor in place. Had to get an adapter for it. After the adapter showed up, I realized I already had one, but it's in there. So that's our water temp. Here's part of the main harness that all clips together. And then there's another chunk of harness back here. It's all kind of temporary held in with zip ties. And over here, I've got the main power and the power for the fuel pump. That's all going to run to the back of the car. So the one thing I have done is remove a lot of extra wire from the system. The Holley setup comes with a couple different wires so you can trigger things like electric fans or other accessories. I'm really not going to need that for this application. It'd be nice for a street car, but my fans have their own thermostat, plus I have a grounding switch for them. So I'm not going to let the ECU run those. So it means I can remove a bunch of these wires. I did forget to remove one wire from the harness. If you can see in there, there's a tan wire. That tan wire is for Holley gauges. I'm actually not running those, so I'm going to go ahead and depin that. And that should be everything for the electrical. Now, nothing's hooked up yet, but I'll be getting to it. So here's a better look at that harness that I've already depinned most of it from. There's only 3 wires left in here. There's a white one, a brown one, and a tan one. I'm going to go ahead and remove the tan one from the system. That's used for the Holley digital gauges, which I don't have. I am going to leave the white one in, even though I'm not going to use it on this initial setup. Down the road, I'm going to convert that distributor so that the computer can control timing. And when I get there, we'll need that white wire. So for now, I'm just going to run it inside the cabin and terminate it. I'll go ahead and show you how we depin this harness. Holley is nice enough to sell a depinning tool. That's this guy here. Let's see if I can put it like this. You can see it's really just a bit of a pointy stick. But that pointy stick also includes these little rubber guys that go in place of the wire. So we'll use this to go ahead and pop that tan wire out. Depinning this is pretty straightforward. You just go ahead and with a flathead screwdriver, pop these tabs gently on the clip. There's one, there's the other. Just remove that clip for now. And we take our depinning tool, and it's going to go in the smaller. There's 2 different sides. There's a big side and a little side. It's going to go in the smaller of those 2. So we'll find our tan wire here. Pop this in. It goes in about 1/4 inch, and that pops the wire right out. So all you do then, put the plug in place of the wire, and put your clip back on. Make sure it's all lined up. So the clip's good. And we can take this wire that we're not using, pull it out, and we're good to go. So I just wanted to show you real fast all what we removed. Most of what we did came out of this 10-pin connector here. So the orange, the yellow, the light blue, light green, gray, and tan wires all came out. You can kind of see there most of what all that does. So I also removed the yellow wire from the 7-pin connector. That one is for the coil if you're not using a CD box. I have an MSD box in this, so hooking this up can fry the system. So instead of running the risk, I just went ahead and removed it. Won't be a problem. So we can get to the fuel now. I'm gonna call this the Mikey angle since you suggested it, but let's go ahead and see what all we got from Summit Racing. I open the wrong side. Maybe. Just cut all the tape. It'll eventually open if you cut all the tape. Alright. So we've got a bunch of new fittings. I think some of them I could have reused from the old system and I still might, but I wasn't sure what I was going to need totally, so I grabbed them. Ooh, they gave me some free hardline clamps, except I won't be running any hard lines. I do have clamps though for the soft lines. That's those guys there. Because we like boxes inside of boxes. A bunch more stainless braided fuel line. This is all Dash 6 stuff, which should be plenty for what we've got. So I can go ahead and use this, use some of the existing line I have, and we can start making up a fuel system. All right, so there it is, all installed and attached to the back of the fuel cell. It's got a little bit of movement to it, but it should be fine. That's those bushings. It's a little close to the spring, But really, not much is going to move around here, and I can tweak things if I need to. If you've never seen underneath here before, it's leaking oil. It's a Chevy. Exhaust, rear end. So yeah, on to the next part. I'm under the car and most of the fuel line is done. So I've got the send and the return lines running all the way from the back of the car up to the front. We'll see what that looks like on the firewall in a sec. But there it is, routing away from anything sharp, anything hot. We've got a bunch of suspension stuff that happens here, but everything seems to clear pretty well. And then you can see it all goes to that fuel pump assembly I've got there, which has the fuel pump on the bottom and the post filter on the top. The only thing I'm waiting on, you can see I've got a bracket here in place. Waiting on one clamp, I think arrives today, and that will be for the pre-filter. And once that's done, fuel system's all wrapped up, and we can move on to wiring. Here's where the fuel system comes up. On top of the frame rail, it actually routes along with the trans cross member, keeps everything tucked up away from heat. That heads into our pressure regulator. So we've got the send on this side, the return on the bottom, and that heads out to the Sniper EFI unit. So we're gonna finish up this wiring and we'll be in business. The bracket I needed for that pre-filter arrived. So here's how the system goes. It comes out of the fuel cell there. That's our 100 micron pre-filter there. So we run out of the pre, into the fuel pump, out of the fuel pump, up to the post filter, which is now a 10 micron, and then all of that runs up to the front of the car. So fuel system is done. The Sniper EFI system has to be wired directly to the battery. You can see I've got two of them back here, so it won't matter which one, but that kind of runs into a problem for a lot of people. If you're trying to be NHRA legal, and you have a battery in the back, you're supposed to have a cutoff switch. And Sniper doesn't even want you routed through the cutoff switch. I do have a cutoff switch, but that's mounted all the way up on the dash. So I'm already not NHRA compliant. So I've got some 10 gauge wire. I'm gonna go ahead and extend the wire from the front to this back battery here, and we'll have power going to the Sniper unit. After a bunch of work, the wiring is done. You can see it's going to the back of the new battery I put here. It's on separate posts. That's the power for everything. That runs up towards the front of the car. While I'm here, I might as well show the fuel pump wiring. So there's a fuel pump ground. It's going to a weather pack. So you can see everything's wired up there. The wires run down out of the way, into the car, under the sill, to under the dash. It's a mess under here right now, but I want to make sure everything works before I tidy it all up. Comes on out through the firewall. That's the power and the fuel pump. The rest of this stuff runs through there. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this fuel line for now. There's no fuel in the system, but I want to flush it out before I try to run this thing. So I'll unhook that, and then we'll put power to it and see if everything comes on and get the initial programming done. Time to see if I did everything right. So we'll go to the back of the car. We'll turn the circuit breaker on. So that sends power up to the main switch here. So far so good. That's my oil pressure light. So now if I turn on the ignition, that screen should come alive. Ignition on. And we've got it. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the initial setup and programming of this thing and let you see what we're working with. So to do the initial programming, we come in and we hit Wizards. We tell it what system we're running, which is the 4-injector 4150. That's not the rest of the 8 injectors. So we hit Next. Number of cylinders is 8. Engine displacement, we'll get it close. And then knock it down a little bit. So it's a 377. Hit Next. Target idle speed. Because this has a no flywheel at all, I'm going to set it around 950 to start. I'm going to have to play with that and see what the car wants. It's a weird setup. This is a race cam setup. No power adders. We're running a CD box. And then we hit start, and it's going to send that tune Just heard the fuel pump run. Need to cycle the ignition to complete operation. Cycled. And we're good. So the car is out in the driveway and everything checks out. I went and flushed the fuel system, hooked it up. There are no leaks from that. It's got the right fuel pressure. The Sniper unit comes on. It's still not in the car, but that's all right. We're ready to go ahead and try to fire this up for the first time. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Not as successful as I would hope. So I messed with it a little bit, and it looks like it's not really happy with low RPM when it's this cold. So I'm gonna go ahead and fire it off one more time, give it a little bit of throttle, and see if we can get it to run for a bit. So there it is. I'm gonna play with it some more, but I think it's a success. Well, I let it run for a while and pushed it back in the garage. It's already learning. As I suspected, the idle is kind of rough because the cam that's in this, it doesn't produce a lot of vacuum, and that's what the system uses to figure out and tune itself. So the idle's off right now. I have a laptop connection for that, so we can work on that, but it does fire up. Let me do it one more time real fast. Power on, system on, and then so you can see what I was talking about with the idle there, but if you're monitoring it, you can keep it running for a while. It's working out pretty great. So I'm excited to get into the next phase of this. For now, I'm gonna clean up some wiring, but that does it for this project. Hit like, hit subscribe, and we'll have more for you soon. Thanks. Good job, bud.